Chapter 364, Samael's Dilemma. They made fun of me. The ungrateful little punks I'd literally saved from certain death had the audacity to make fun of me. Instead of chiseling statues to commemorate my bravery, composing songs in my honor, or making public proclamations of my valor, they made fun of me. All I got was just snarky remarks about my dress, and pitying looks because I was spooning a 5-foot golden greatsword. Ingrates, I tell you. Every last one of them. I had performed the impossible, and this was the thanks I got. I hated them all. Anyway, after Ray was done recording my embarrassing moments for posterity and Michael stopped treating me like a high-needs toddler, we circled back to the matter at hand. So, what do we do? Alexia had finally asked, and though her voice was calm, I could detect some sharpness in it. Do we go after Jake? I don't like the idea of a divine weapon in the hands of someone unstable. I scowled, narrowing my eyes. Wow, okay, that really sounded like a jibe at me. Well, if the shoe fits. What? I said the ship is what fits, everyone. Alexia shouted in response, flailing a finger toward the general direction of the half-finished vessel on the shoreline. The hull and the crab shells. They fit together perfectly. It's a structural miracle. Just look at it, because I can't, and tell me how beautiful it is. I scowled harder. She was terrible at distracting. But, since I only had one arm to strangle her with, and that one arm was currently devoted to spooning my sword, I let her insolence slide. Besides, I was thinking about her suggestion. She had a point. Should we go after Jake? With Kong and Lily in our ranks, tracking him down wouldn't be so difficult. But the real problem was what came next. Jake had definitely reached B rank. On paper, we outnumbered him, sure. But physically and mentally, none of us were in any condition to face a strong enemy right now. Especially since there was still a hard journey ahead. We still had to sail across the lake of grief to reach my father's sanctuary. Yes, the thought of letting that oversized pig slip away left a bitter taste in my mouth. And I knew it was going to be a choice that would come back to bite me later, because Asmodeus had already warned me that he was going to make Jake the 10th Demon Prince. I thought back to everything I knew about the Queen of Black Rot. And to think there would exist something, or someone, even more powerful than her in the future. A cold shiver ran up my spine. It was a chilling thought. Tisk, I clicked my tongue. But I had no choice. We couldn't go after him now. We were exhausted, mentally and physically. If we engaged Jake right now, I had a sinking feeling that at least one of us would die. Michael alone was formidable with just Zaldrith's assistance. But Jake had an even higher ranked demon prince aiding him. He was definitely going to be a fatal challenge if we engaged him in our current state. So, no, I decided against Alexia's suggestion. I couldn't risk anyone dying. We had survived this far with a tonload of luck and a lot of strategy. I wasn't about to make a wrong call and throw all that away to satisfy my ego. No, I said firmly. We won't pursue Jake. We need to focus on getting out of here. No one argued. The mood around the camp had grown a bit dry. I noticed that many of them were still uneasy around Michael, which made sense. He had tried to kill them all, after all. And Lily was still giving him a wide berth. I felt bad. So, I decided to gather everyone around. Most of them were hesitant. We had taken a long break only a few hours ago, and there was still a lot of work to do. But when I reminded them that the tranquility of mind was just as important as the rest of the body, they reluctantly agreed. Okay, maybe I threw a small tantrum to push the point. But it worked. They did agree in the end. Sam, there's still a ton of work left, you know. Vince whined. We haven't harvested enough shells for the hull. We also need to. Oh, shut up, you virgin. I cut him off. I'm not. Let's do something fun. I interrupted again, grinning mischievously. He rolled his eyes, and so did the others. Like what? Ray asked with a raised brow. Like, I said conspiratorially, leaning forward, distributing the loot. Silence. Utter silence. Michael blinked at me in that silence and tilted his head. What loot? I looked back at him like he was stupid. The fuck do you mean what loot? The artifacts we got from the god who eats is. What else? Again, utter silence. It was Alexia's turn to regard me confusedly. Sam, we thought you'd take all that loot. Since, well, you killed the creature alone. It was your effort. To be fair, it was more of a deus ex machina moment than anything else, a situation where I got a perfectly timed, absurdly convenient temporary power-up that let me kill a fallen god when I needed it most. Not exactly something I could reproduce at will, so calling it my effort felt like a stretch. Still, I wasn't complaining that it worked. Nonsense, I said with a casual wave of my hand. We'll distribute the loot. I'm not being generous. There are reasons. 1. A human can't bind more than a certain number of soulbound relics to their soul at once. That number depends on their soul rank. For me, that's 2 or 3 right now. I already have my baby Oriath. That leaves room for only 2 more, and there are far too many artifacts to hoard. So, we share. And 2, the journey isn't over yet. The last stretch is going to be brutal. We need everything distributed properly to maintain power balance. After a few shared glances a bit more convincing, everyone nodded in agreement. Okay, so, if we're sharing, I'll take the disc. I grabbed Vince's hand just as he stood, yanking him back down onto his spot. He looked at me with confusion. Not so fast, boy, I said, my grin widening so much it was probably scary since everyone visibly shuddered. What are you thinking? Juliana dared to ask, recognizing the wicked glee in my eyes. Oh, I'm so glad you asked. I smacked my thigh, overjoyed. Because this is going to be fun. Preparation took a little time, maybe half an hour, tops. By the end, I had fashioned a pair of benches and a center table out of packed sand and dirt. And more importantly, I selected the Vajra to bind to myself. The process was simple, if slightly dramatic. I let it drink a bit of my essence-infused blood, and soon enough, I could shoot lightning bolts from the metallic scepter at will. It wasn't as glorious as my darling Oriath, nothing would ever be, but it was still a top-tier divine artifact. Once I was satisfied, it was time to call the team. Obviously, they all looked slightly apprehensive. Samael, Michael said, his one good eye full of fatigue and dread, whatever you're planning, please remember we are currently stranded in a death forest and I am very, very tired. Oh, hush, I chirped, waving the metallic scepter in my hand, letting the azure jewels embedded in its spherical heads catch the diffused moonlight and gleam ominously. This is for your own good. It'll be a team-building exercise. Then I signaled Juliana to bring out the rest of the divine artifacts, the Khopesh, the serrated disc, the trident, the storage ring, the movement ring, the warhammer, the ceremonial dagger, and the crooked staff. The full array of our shiny new toys. So, my dear unwilling contestants, we're going to play a game. I call it Samael's Dilemma. The rules are simple. 2 of you sit across from each other. There will be 2 items on your table. You each have a choice, cooperate or betray. If you both cooperate, you split the items fairly. If one betrays while the other cooperates, the traitor takes everything, and the nice person gets electrocuted. I laughed an evil, rolling sort of laugh that made my own hairs stand on end. And, if you both try to betray each other, both of you get electrocuted. I held the Vajra aloft and let a few sparks crackle from its tip, just to emphasize the electrocuted part. Michael, Julie, you're up first. Michael sighed, shooting a glance at the ceremonial dagger and stone ring on the table, then at Juliana. Sam, this is childish. Julia, let's just cooperate. We both need weapons for the journey ahead. Juliana's expression was unreadable at first, then she put on a smile that didn't quite reach those razor-sharp blue eyes. Okay, it is the logical choice, anyway. Wonderful. Write your choices on the clay tablets in front of you. I raised a partition between them so they couldn't peek at each other. Once they were finished scribbling, I snatched the tablets with a bit of dramatic flourish. Michael chose cooperate. How sweet, how loyal and noble and trusting, ah. I tried to clap, though only one hand was available for gestures. And Juliana chose betray. Michael's face immediately went as pale as a ghost. He looked at Juliana, who was calmly scooping the dagger and ring into her hands. Quote. JJ Julia, he stammered. Why, you said it was the logical choice. It was, she replied, already walking away with the smug cat. Logic being that I get everything and you get nothing. Bwahahaha, I nearly toppled over from laughter. Oh, the betrayal, the drama, and now for your punishment, you fucking loser. Before Michael could react, I pressed the tip of the Vajra against his side, letting the sparks ignite. Katesy, arg, Michael screamed and thrashed helplessly, before collapsing on the ground. I'm going to kill you in your sleep, Sam. Next, Vince and Ray, I shouted, ignoring the death threats. The 2 best friends shuffled forward, looking equally horrified and suspicious. Ray was nervously rubbing his missing hand against his tunic while Vince gulped anxiously. Look, Vince, Ray turned, we've been through hell. I'm down a hand and you're down a shoulder blade. We're brothers, right? We cooperate. No tricks. No, tricks. Yeah, totally. Vince nodded back quickly. Brothers to the end. Brothers to the end. They sat, scribbled, and I grabbed the tablets. And for the reveal, I shouted theatrically. Vince chose. Betray. And Ray chose, well, would you look at that? Betray. Distraught, they both grabbed their heads and were about to yell at each other. But before they could protest, I sent a thin tendril of electricity zapping them in quick succession. Kraz. Oh God, why? Vince crumpled like a house of cards, smoke curling from his hair. Why, you fucking traitor. I panicked. Ray wailed beside him, convulsing under aftershocks. I nearly fell onto my back, clutching the Vajra and howling in laughter so hard my ribs hurt. This is the best day of my life. The rest of the group watched in horror. Alexia was backing up slowly, Lily was clearly thinking about a way to cheat with her foresight, and Kong looked totally resigned. He was blankly staring at the charred sand where Vince had now passed out with foam building at the corner of his mouth, probably seeing himself in. The blue-haired boy. All right, who's next? I asked, holding another item like an auctioneer. Alexia, Lily, don't be shy, let's see how much you ladies really trust each other. Chapter 365. Spoils of War and How to Distribute Them. So, by the end of the game, this was how the distribution of spoils looked like. Juliana walked away with the ceremonial dagger and the ring of movement. The ring granted her the ability to perform instant short-distance teleportation. Its effective range was tied directly to her rank, which was currently capped at 5 meters. The dagger, however, was the real prize. It possessed a rather nasty enchantment that made its blade sharper the sturdier the opponent's defense. It was designed to ignore and pierce through any physical barrier, provided the enemy was of the same rank as Juliana or lower. Poor Michael, on the other hand, received absolutely nothing but trauma. It was hilarious, at least for me. Ray also ended up empty-handed. As for Kong, he finally played against me, and I decided to be kind to the mutt. So I let him have the cleaver of sin. It was a khopesh, as massive and wickedly curved as a guillotine blade. Its singular enchantment made sure that as long as the blade had tasted even a single drop of the enemy's blood, the weapon would vibrate and pull the wielder toward their location, regardless of distance or any stealth-based concealment. And since it would calculate the most efficient path to the victim, it meant Kong could effectively close his eyes and let the blade's murderous instinct do the steering for him. It was less of a sword and more of a homing missile with an edge. With it, he could even fight opponents he couldn't sense. Then, at last, Lily was successful in securing the bringer of lost winds. It was a crooked staff made of bone and gold. It gave her the power to summon howling gales and manifest storms. Their scale was, again, dependent on her own rank. She also managed to snag the ring of storage. As its name suggested, it allowed her to store inanimate objects she could touch with it. Cliché, I know, but the ring could be used to capture and store physical attacks like arrows shot and spells cast directly at her. In simple words, Lily could literally swallow an incoming attack and then refire it later at a target of her choosing. Of course, the timing required to pull that off had to be immaculate. Imagine I lob a fireball at her. If she times the ring's contact correctly, the spell simply vanishes into thin air. If she doesn't, the fireball explodes in her face. The internal storage capacity, like everything else, was obviously rank dependent. But instead of hoarding it for herself, Lily gave it to Vince. "Why?" Vince stammered, wide-eyed, his fingers still twitching from the residual static of the little shock therapy session I put him through. Lily gave a casual shrug. "You've been saying you wanted a storage artifact forever, right? Think of it as a token of gratitude. You managed the backline perfectly during our fights. Honestly, without you, we all would have been screwed." Vince went silent, staring at the ring for a long moment before accepting it with a stiff nod. It was clear he was wrestling with a torrent of different emotions. I refrained from making fun of him, which was a monumental feat of self-control on my part. I was also partly distracted by Alexia von Zinks. The blind girl was currently rolling around on the white sand, throwing a tantrum like a toddler in a grocery store whose mother had refused to buy him anything. Yeah, basically, she had lost to Lily. The sting of betrayal was already bad enough, but having me zap her on top of it clearly fried her last remaining circuit of dignity. "This isn't fair. This is just not fair." She cried and hammered her fists against the ground. "I'm a high noble, for fuck's sake. I saved all your asses. I was even infected with soul rot. I'm literally blind. I deserve rewards, not these fucking commoners. ... Wow, did she really just play two victim cards at the same time, infection and blindness? Careful, your elitism is leaking and your narcissism is showing, I chuckled, leaning back on the log I was sitting on. Besides, you do have the ring of healing. Not that. I want something cool, something flashy, Alexia screamed, then sat upright and pointed a slightly off-target finger in my vague direction. And you are one to talk. You're the president of the Narcissism Club. You're the CEO of elitism. I'm just trying to survive in a world where my only reward for being a good friend is demonic infection and a permanent headache. Oh, Lady Alexia, Ray chimed in, wiping away an imaginary tear from his eye as he dropped to one knee in front of her. He then began to lament in a sing-song voice. If only I had an extra hand to give you, I'd give it. If only I had an extra life to spare, I'd surrender it. If only I had a single artifact to bestow upon your noble person, I would. Believe me, I would. But alas, I, too, am merely a victim of life's cruel whims. Kong jumped in immediately. If you want my khopesh, young mistress, you can have it. Alexia's face turned crimson with fury. I don't want your charity or your imaginary lives. I want my own rewards. Michael was crying somewhere as well. I also want a reward. Oh, do you, you devil's spawn? Was taking my hand and my dignity not reward enough for you? Ray snapped at him. You were out there chopping away at my limbs, Mikey. You've already had your fill of loot, it's called my motor skills. I was possessed, Michael wailed, burying his face in his hands. And I still ended up with one less eye. Do you want to know what possession feels like, Ray? It's unpaid and unappreciated labor. 0 out of 10, would not recommend. I wished I had a packet of popcorn. Because this was beautiful, better than any academy drama that I had ever instigated. This was the true spirit of gaming with friends, wasn't it? All the fighting and yelling and swearing and cursing and the inevitable questioning of why you were friends with these people in the first place. It was just perfect. Eventually, they got tired of shouting over one another and slumped back down around the campfire. The three who hadn't received any rewards yet, Alexia and Michael and Ray, were still pouting. So I decided to host one more game for them. They outright refused to participate in anything involving physical danger or searing pain, which killed most of the hilarity I had planned. In the end, I settled for something relatively safe and boring. The new game was simple. Ever since the day Ray cracked that painfully unfunny joke and somehow made Juliana laugh, she hadn't laughed so openly. The objective for the three contestants was to make her laugh. The first one to succeed would win. Ray, the former champion, was confident. He had done it once. How hard would it be to do it again? Impossibly hard, as it turned out. He went first, standing and dusting off his one hand before swaggering over to where Juliana was helping Lily dismantle the crabs. She looked up as he approached. Okay, Julia, Ray started, wagging his eyebrows at her. Knock, knock, oh my god, a knock-knock joke. I already knew it would fail. She hated those. As expected, Juliana just stared at him. Her face remained as expressive as a roadside pebble. But then, for reasons known only to her, she decided to play along. Who's there? She asked flatly. Interrupting cow. Interruptee. Moo. Ray shouted, jazz handing with his one hand. Quote. 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 What followed next was a profound silence. Not even a cricket chirped. Mostly because there weren't any nearby. Juliana just sighed wearily and looked at me. We're almost home. Can I please stab him yet? Next was Michael. He stood up, cleared his throat, adjusted his hair, and looked Juliana dead in the eye. What do you call a bee that can't make up its mind? Quote. What? Maybe. A stupid pun. Really? Can none of these idiots construct a proper punchline? I facepalmed. Juliana's jaw clenched hard, but she managed a tight smile. Wow, so original. I've never heard that before. Michael returned with slumped shoulders. Finally, it was Alexia's turn. She was rolling up her sleeves like she was about to fight off a gladiator. But in her excitement, she misjudged her reach and accidentally extended one arm too close to the fire. A few stray embers jumped onto her sleeves. She started yelling, ouch, ouch, I burned my hand, my delicate, noble skin will be charred. Quick, I need ice. She sprang to her feet and scrambled over to Juliana, who was watching the frantic display with mild interest. And before the white-haired girl could move, Alexia invaded her personal space and pressed her burnt hand over Juliana's chest, right above her heart. Alexia's face immediately relaxed in blissful relief. Ah, she cooed. So cold Tilda. ... Oh, the joke was that Juliana's heart was as cold as ice. Juliana froze. Her back went rigid, and her pale cheeks flushed a shade of pink I didn't think her biology was capable of producing. Then, she actually laughed. And I mean really, genuinely laughed. She threw her head back and let out a full-throated peal of amusement. She looked so breathtakingly beautiful in that moment it felt almost unfair. Ha ha ha, okay, that was actually good. The silence that followed this time was stunned. Alexia stood unmoving for a few seconds, half awestruck by her own success. Then, she punched the air and began a ridiculous victory dance. Eat that, you filthy commoners. She screamed at Michael and Ray. Remember, neither of you can ever hold a candle to me. Remember that you exist only because I allow it. Remember that the sun rises specifically to remind the world of my existence. The two losers, meanwhile, were massaging their foreheads in a display of shame. I thought the pun was good. Michael sniffed. It was layered. The world simply isn't ready for my comedic genius, Ray muttered, shaking his head. Do you think I didn't think of the cold heart joke? I did, but I chose a risky, avant-garde approach with the cow. I was pushing the boundaries of the medium. The audience just wasn't sophisticated enough. And that was how Alexia von Zinks got the Cracker of Doom, a terrifying warhammer capable of generating localized kinetic blasts upon impact. Naturally, the damage potency was, yet again, dependent on the user's rank.